It's the Pikachu Project.
Hello, and welcome to the Pikachu Project, a spoiler-filled re-ranking of all 22 Pokemon movies. We are your expert hosts. My name is Gigi. I have seen every episode of the Pokemon anime.
And I'm Wallix. I am a doctor and a big Pikachu fan.
Yeah, very big Pikachu fan. So, to give a recap of what this podcast is about, back in 2015, we watched all Pokemon movies. We continued watching them as they came out, and we ranked them in order of quality. We decided, since we have a lot of time right now because of the our good friend Poke Russ, to re-rank the movies, and we are re-watching them in our own rank order from worst to best. And this is only the Pikachu Project movies, the movies that come out every year, typically in the summer. So, as of now, the movies that we have already watched and ranked, at our very bottom tier, we have Pokemon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea, all by itself. In the next tier up, we saw Pokemon 2000, Genesect and Mewtwo. What is that movie called?
Genesect and the Legend Awakened.
Genesect and the Legend Awakened. Above that, we have Latios, Pokemon Heroes, Latios and Latias. Above that, we have Hoopa
and the Clash of Ages.
Hoopa and the Clash... I can never remember these titles. Hoopa and the Clash of Ages. Above that, we had in the next tier up, Pokemon The Rise of Darkrai.
Yeah. And that's where we left off.
And that is where we left off. So, we are going to get started talking about our next few movies. Mm-hmm. So the first movie that we watched this week was Pokemon Arceus and the Jewel of Life. I know there's a lot of drama about how to pronounce Arceus, but...
that's what we're going with.
But I'm going with Arceus, because it's like an arc. Like, I always think of like an arc. Like, what am I thinking of? Isn't there an arc in the Bible or something? Isn't
like
there an important
Noah's Ark? Are you
like
kidding?
Noah's Ark or something.
You went to Catholic.
No, isn't there a different arc? I'm thinking, isn't there one in Indiana Jones?
Oh, the Ark of the Covenant.
Ark of the Covenant. I think that's my association, is all these
goodness.
like arc things. It sounds fancy. Not a very good reason.
Also, I'm pretty sure that's what they pronounce it as in the movie.
Yeah, they do. Arceus. Yeah. So.
Anyway. Pronounced very well by Dan Green, our very own.
Oh, yeah, fun fact.
Yeah, you'll hear Arceus, mostly pronounced by our very own Pharaoh Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Moto, from the
Yami
popular...
Yugi.
Yeah, well, he does both.
Oh, that's true, he does both. But he totally has the Yami Yugi Pharaoh voice in this movie. From
the popular TV show, also voiced by 4Kids primarily, Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
So we have one of the primary characters voiced by Yami Yugi, the Pharaoh Atem. Spoilers.
Spoilers for the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series.
Yeah.
All right.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Do you wanna start off on our recap of the plot?
Yeah. So the plot of Arceus, this movie. So this is actually the third in the Diamond and Pearl trilogy. It actually is the only set of movies to kind of follow from each other, like storyline wise, in all of the Pokemon movies. So this takes place after Dialga and Palkia have met when they should never have and started fighting, and then summoned Giratina. But I mean, most of that doesn't really matter to the plot of this movie. But basically, it explains the start of the movie, which is a little confusing, when Ash and friends walk up to this area and get into a fight over watermelons, which is a great fight. And Ash and Dawn do a great tag team over the watermelons. And then they meet... they walk next to this lake, and suddenly, I think Dialga and Giratina just explode out of the lake, basically, and start fighting each other. And then two people run up named Sheena and Kevin. Eric is the other guy. From
Eric's in the other movie.
This is Sheena and Kevin run up and say, "Transcend the life and space, time, the borders of time and space," or something, and calm down both Dialga.
Sheena does that.
Yeah, Sheena does that and calm down both Dialga and Giratina, and explain to Ash and friends that she is descended from this guy named Deimos. And
Damos?
Damos. Yeah. And because of this descendants, she has the power to calm Pokemon. And she's been observing that a lot of things have been happening since the original clash with Dialga and Palkia some time ago. And so she's observed that a lot of things are going wrong, but also, more importantly, she has this, like, kind of historic role where, because of her ancestry to this person, Damos, she is in charge of this jewel called the Jewel of Life, which... she needs to return to Arceus, because Arceus will someday in the future come down and attempt to destroy everybody, and she needs to give him the Jewel of Life to appease him. And why is that? They go into this whole backstory, early in the movie. Basically, a long time ago, Damos borrowed the Jewel of Life from Arceus to reinvigorate the land, and they were great friends. And when Arceus came back to retrieve the Jewel of Life, which is an amalgamation of 3 of Arceus' own life plates, which...
no, 4 of them.
4 of them, yeah. Earth, or fire, water, electricity,
Earth.
And dragon.
Yes.
Fire,
yes.
water, electricity, and dragon.
That was it.
So, Arceus gave a part of himself for Damos to regenerate the Earth. And then when it came time to get the jewel back... from Damos betrayed Arceus and would not give it back to him. And Arceus was terribly saddened and wounded by this betrayal and went away to brood about it and will come back in however many years to destroy the whole world for his transgression.
Yeah, because since he didn't get it back, then he didn't get those plates back, and so he's not full-powered Arceus. And
so Arceus does come down from the sky very conveniently at exactly the time when Ash and friends show up. Sheena goes up and says, "Here is your Jewel of Life back." And then Arceus is like, "This is a fake," and shatters it. And she's just like, "I swear I thought this was the real Jewel of Life." And he's like, "I'm gonna destroy all of you lying humans." And then Dialga and Palkia and Giratina explode out of nowhere again to protect Ash and friends, because at this point they're all buddies with Ash and friends based on the events of the previous 2 movies. And they are trying their best to protect the land from being destroyed by Arceus' rage. In the meantime, Sheena's just like, "I don't know why this is happening. I swear I thought this was real." And Dialga is like, "There's no hope. We cannot beat Arceus," basically, wordlessly, with saying that kind of noises, and looks at them and says, "I'm going to teleport you back in time so that you'll prevent all of this from happening." And so Dialga teleports them back to the recent ancient past. Well, I guess the ancient past, where Damos is about to betray Arceus, and then Damos successfully betrays Arceus, and they fail to stop him. And then Sheena goes, "Dialga, maybe a little bit further earlier. Further in the past than that." And so Dialga literally just puts them back maybe a day earlier, a half day earlier. But that's enough time. And so they try their best to go try to stop Damos from betraying Arceus, but they get split up. Sheena goes and meets this guy named...
Oh, and Kevin doesn't come with them. He's just back in the present, by the way. Yeah. Also, Team Rocket has shown up at this point and is wandering around in the present.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember who this guy's name is.
Oh, yeah. So once they arrive, they get kind of accosted by Marcus, who seems to be the guy in charge around, and a bunch of Pokemon and people. So Sheena goes with Marcus to explain to them who they are and what's going on. The rest of them kind of get thrown in prison.
Yeah. And so the 2 groups are split up. And then Sheena is sitting at a dinner table with Marcus trying to explain, Damos is going to betray you and everybody by not returning the Jewel of Life, and we need to prevent that. But in the meantime, Ash and friends are in jail where they meet Damos, and Damos is like, "Marcus betrayed me, and all of this is a lie." So basically, Damos has no intention of betraying Arceus, and Ash and friends realize that, maybe Damos was brainwashed, most likely by Bronzong, who did the same thing to them. Hypnosis. To betray Arceus, and Damos is innocent, and Marcus is the person at fault. And so they all decide we have to break out of jail because Marcus is about to betray Arceus, and we need to prevent it. And so there's all these antics where all of the little Pokemon help them get keys and stuff, and help them break out of jail, and they all break out of jail. And in the meantime, Sheena is unwittingly informing Marcus of everything that's going to happen, including what originally happened, which was that both Damos and Marcus are sort of killed by Arceus's rage. And now Marcus knows how to get around it, and he's perfected his plan to betray Arceus using the information that Sheena gave. And so they all basically arrive at the same time, right as Arceus is sailing through the door, basically saying, "I'm here for my life jewel." And so Sheena goes up to Arceus as so Marcus basically tricks Sheena and plays along, saying, "Oh, Sheena, you're totally right. We can't let Damos betray Arceus. So here's the jewel in this staff. Go present it to Arceus." And so Sheena goes up and says, "Here, I've brought you the jewel back." And she's just like, "Oh, great. I'm going to solve a millennia-old trauma that my people have experienced." And then she opens the staff, and there's no jewel there. And Arceus like, "What? Humans have betrayed me!" And Marcus is like, "Ha ha ha!" And then has all of the Pokemon attack Arceus and bury him in a pool of silver.
That hardens as it pools around him, so he can't move.
So he's doing a great job of destroying Arceus right now.
Quite frankly.
Actually. And Sheena's like, "What? No, what?" Because she thought that, she's just really all
She did not
backwards.
have all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point. And then Ash and friends pop out with Damos and say, "Sheena, you've been tricked. Marcus is bad, as you can see here."
He has red spiky hair.
Yeah, he has red spiky hair. He's wearing all red, and he's got a lot of Pokemon enslaved in chains.
Yeah.
And so Damos and Ash and friends face off against Marcus in an effort to free Arceus and retrieve the Jewel of Life. And they do, and they successfully take the Jewel of Life back from Marcus in an amazing feat in which Ash jumps down a bunch of poles and grabs the Jewel of Life with his feet. And basically has the jewel. And then they go down to Arceus and say, "Here, take the Jewel of Life back. None of this has to happen. We don't want to betray you." And Arceus is just having trouble believing all of this. And I forgot what it is exactly that makes Arceus believe him, but I think that Ash touches him in the head or something, and Arceus goes "Damos and everybody, I understand. You don't have to."
Well, I think Damos and Sheena are trying to get through to Arceus. Remember, because they have they're related. They have this special, transcend the confines of time and space power or whatever to kind of get at the essence of Arceus. If you saw Steven Universe, it's very much like when Steven is in everyone's headspace and he's reaching out to them. That sort of thing.
Yeah, and I forgot what it is exactly that helps them get through. But as soon as they get through, Arceus is "I understand now. You guys have been trying to help me all along, and I forgive all of you." And sees Ash and says, "Ash and Pikachu, thank you," basically. And so they cast Marcus down or something, or they say well, no, I mean Marcus is just sad because he's
yeah, because his whole reasoning was he genuinely thought that the land would become barren again. If Arceus took back the Jewel of Life, so he was trying to protect his community.
Yeah, and
he still believes that, it seems.
Yeah, they so Marcus basically is sad, but they kind of resolve the situation, and they get kind of teleported back to the future, kind of spontaneously. And then once they're back to the future, they're like, "What? Everybody's still fighting," and Arceus is still destroying the world, and Ash is like, "I don't know, this wasn't supposed to happen, we changed the past." And then Arceus locks eyes with Ash and Pikachu and goes "I remember you." And then everything becomes better because Arceus remembers that humans were really trying to help him all along. And when when they look over at the valley hasn't changed either. They didn't turn barren or anything, even though they changed the past. And they found out, apparently, Marcus was able to use, good old human effort, combined with the previous power of the Jewel of Life to keep the valley going. And so everybody was happy, and Marcus honored his future friends in a stone slate.
You mean Damos?
Sorry, Damos. Damos is the good guy.
Yeah.
Everything I said about Marcus, Damos. Sorry, Damos, good guy.
He has blue eyes, so
Yeah.
that helps.
And his Yami Yugi.
Yeah.
So basically, Damos restored the valley through good old human labor.
Yeah.
And everything kind of resolves from there. So that's pretty much the summary.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So why was it ranked where it was ranked the first time around? The first time around, it was ranked kind of in the lower part of that middle lower tier.
Yeah.
I remember a big sticking point with us is there's this whole time travel thing issue that comes up that you may have caught in the summary where they go back to the future after they fixed everything. And all of the Pokemon are still fighting, and Arceus locks eyes with Ash and then, quote, remembers what actually happened. So it's almost like there's like a weird like update that's happening to everyone's brains or something all at once, where they're like the truth of the world is being updated or something in real time.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first watched it, that was a huge sticking point for us, and we were like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, time travel plots already like never make sense because spoilers, time travel isn't real. But but this in particular, I remember bugged us a lot, and we talked about it for a while about how that was irritating. The other big thing I remember about watching this the first time was we thought Arceus was like really dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know who plays the voice. Nothing against them, but I just think their voice is a little grating and silly and evil sounding.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really fit with your image of the god Pokemon.
Yeah.
So I remember us laughing a lot at Arceus the first time around too, and thinking that was a little silly. But it definitely didn't have any of the major issues that those in the lower tiers have, of like the plot not making any sense, or it being extremely boring. So that's why it wasn't quite as low as those, but there were a few sticking points we have. What do you remember? Anything else?
No, I mean, I don't really have much to add. The Arceus voice, really, I don't know, we really thought that he was kind of stupid. We thought he was easily fooled by this whole gambit, and, you know, had kind of very limited excuses for wanting to then come back and destroy the world.
Yeah.
And he was just like, Damos, why? Like, this kind of like snakish kind of like voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So rewatching it, as with literally every movie so far, I was pleasantly surprised to see it was not as bad as we remembered.
Oh.
That's been a very good consistent here. Really was not as bothered by either the time travel thing or the Arceus thing quite as much this time. I still think the time travel thing really doesn't make sense, but I was not viscerally irritated by it in the same way. I also still think that they should have switched the voice actors of Damos and Arceus, because I think Yami Yugi as God would be a really good casting choice.
Yes.
But it also didn't bother me as much, and I'm not really sure why you might have heard this in our voices, I'm not really sure why we thought Arceus was so dumb the first time around. Like, I kind of get it, but I think we were really harsh.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, you would think that God would be able to tell when a guy is being, like, brainwashed by a Bronzong. Like, that would be really, like, you know, limited motivation for, like, you know, having 1,000-year-old vendetta against all of humanity. Like, so, you know, I get it.
But I also am, like, I kind of see Old Testament God a little bit in there.
Sure.
In that sort of thing. And I also, you know, it's not God in that same kind of like Christian sense. It's far more. It is a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like, it is like a Pokemon being.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. I think that Arceus didn't seem that stupid. It like follows. Like, you know, sure, it doesn't necessarily, you know, it's not realistic, but like that kind of like, you know, Old Testament or like, you know, mythological drama sort of way, it totally follows.
And the all of the stuff set in the past is very clearly like ancient Greece inspired too.
Yeah.
It's kind of the vibe, so it really has that kind of more mythological aspect kind of drilled down. The other particular thing that I want to point out that was I enjoyed both the first time we watched it and this time is if you're at all familiar with the Pokemon anime or the movies, you know that Ash is famous for great feats of athleticism that perhaps are not befitting to a 10-year-old boy. But I really think that this one perhaps takes the cake, just because it feels very visceral when he leaps down from the cliff, grabs onto like a stick sticking out of the cliff, swings his feet and like catches the jewel of life, and then drops it below to Pikachu, and then proceeds to like bound up these like individual poles like a freaking ninja.
Yeah,
like,
above like a
the way
bottomless
up.
pit.
Yeah, it's just like very. I was like applauding. I was like, "Wow, this is really incredible."
She definitely applauded, and then said later, "I wanted to applaud," and I was just like, "No, you did applaud."
I wanted to applaud more, I guess is what I meant. It was pretty incredible, and that's something that I particularly enjoy about this movie.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like, I also enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. I think that the plot really does like kind of intellectually follow. And and
it's got good reveal moments too.
Yeah, and it's very, it's got a great narrative hook where it's all about trying to like, correct like the original sin of humanity in a way where the original sin is not giving the jewel back to Arceus, and it's following like Sheena's like deep desire to correct this like historic scar across like her people and all of humanity is like very engaging for a movie to have as its main hook.
And I think Marcus also as a villain, even though he doesn't get a whole lot of screen time or depth, you really do get the idea that he is genuinely just trying to protect his community and protect his people, because he really does think that it's the valley is going to become barren again. So his motivation is like a really positive thing too, which I think is interesting. I also think going back to like the kind of reveals of the twists and turns of like who's actually the good guy, who's actually trying to trick Arceus and stuff. I think a lot of kids media sometimes leans too hard into making it really obvious to the audience what's going to happen, and this movie doesn't do that. Like I didn't remember actually for a while we were watching it that twist even existed, since it's been 5 years since we watched it. Until I saw Marcus, and then I was like, oh yeah, that guy with the spiky red hair. But when they show the first scene with Damos like quote betraying Arceus and stuff, it's not like they make it super obvious he's being brainwashed or anything like that, which I really appreciate, so that the twist actually feels a bit like a twist later on. That being said, there are some ancillary characters. Kevin is there for, I would say, virtually no reason. If you remember him from the beginning of the movie. Yeah. Really not sure why he's around. No. It could be more exciting. The beginning is very confusing if you haven't immediately watched the previous movies, because it really seems like all of these legendaries are coming out of nowhere and fighting, and they kind of explain it, but like not really.
Not really.
If you have watched the previous movies, I think it totally feels
It's like a really satisfying end to the trilogy in a way.
Yeah, but if you haven't, which, we watched this before we watched the Giratina movie, which comes in between, so we were a little like, what's happening?
Ash going like, you remember me? Yeah. And Giratina's like,
yeah, so I think it still has its weaknesses for sure. Yeah, so I think that brings us to ranking again. I went ahead and ranked this above The Rise of Darkrai, which it was above The Rise of Darkrai before, too, for me. And I felt totally comfortable doing that. That was an easy one for me. I think it has fewer weaknesses. There were a lot of ways in which I enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed watching The Rise of Darkrai, just viscerally, too. And it never hurts to hear Yamayugi saying, Pichu.
Pichu.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so so I guess that makes it for you, Gigi, the top of your list so far. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of tough. I actually liked this movie a lot. I also liked The Rise of Darkrai a lot, and it was kind of like hard for me to decide which one would be better. Because the main issue I had with The Rise of Darkrai is that it's a very like formulaic plot. Like a lot of the Chekhov's guns are clearly like telegraphed, like from the song at the start to everything. And so basically like 15 minutes into the movie, you kind of see how the entire movie is gonna go, which was not the case with Arceus. You could definitely see it was kind of like bordering on too confusing at the start, but it really does kind of like follow and has like kind of like interesting like narratively satisfying reveals and all of that. At the same time though, I don't know, like there's something about the Arceus movie that didn't feel as I guess I didn't feel like a strong sense of like character building. I think that Damos is kind of like a mythological-ish character. Like when you meet him personally, he doesn't really grow on you in a certain way. Like, you know, you could have like had like a little character quirk of his or something, but he doesn't. He's just a noble hero. Like, you know, and Sheena is also like as much her role in the plot as she is a human, which for me, like, I don't know if I'm just not remembering correctly at this point, like, when I'm thinking about the rise of Darkrai, but I felt like, you know, I had met people who you see, like, you know, flashbacks to their, like, you know, early life, and then you see them, like, kind of later in life. You think about how this, like, you know, love triangle between the Tonio and Alice and Baron Licky Licky, I don't care what his name is, like, you know, they're, like, lifetime, like, you know, in this town. I felt like, to me, like, the town felt like it was vibrant and like interesting in a certain way that I felt like the Arceus movie had a lot of, like, you know, stone prisons and like for a movie about like ancient Greece, and like I'm like literally a classics minor, like the ancient Greece really didn't do it for me in terms of like a setting. Like,
harsh critic here.
Yeah, like you could have had, like, you know, a great, like, it didn't look like Athens or something. Somehow the ancient times still looked ancient, which is not how ancientness works. Like, it's supposed to look new when you're there and ancient after the fact. So yeah. I don't know. Like, there was something about the Arceus movie that was narratively satisfying, but didn't like hit me with the punch and the tension and the action sequences of the Darkrai movie that did. Especially like the moment where like Darkrai dies, like, you know, is like exploded in the middle of like these giant beams and like slowly vanishes. It's like a really, like, you know, terrible and like very gripping sacrifice to me, and that like he was trying so hard to, like, you know, fight for everybody the entire movie. Whereas you don't really get that kind of moment exactly in any of the Pokemon or the people in the Arceus movie. So I don't know, like it was hard for me to decide, because again, like, it's kind of predictable, like, you know, Darkrai movie versus the more, like, you know, a little cold but intellectual, like, you know, for like two movies that are like really low on the list, intellectual and or you know, exciting Arceus movie. So like for me it's kind of a wash. I could go either way, but, you know, like, I feel like in my heart I had to keep my list the way it was before, where the Darkrai movie is above and the Arceus movie is just below it, but both of them still in that tier above the Hoopa movie, which is the highest of the previous tier that we have so far.
Yeah. And I think this is a good time to say that kind of in this middle area that we're getting into is where probably we're going to see the most disagreement between us. That was true in our previous list, and I feel like it's probably going to be true in this list too. And the reason is not that we have wildly different feelings about these movies. The reason is that a lot of these movies are extremely similar in quality. And so a lot of it, I think, comes down to, like, subjective experience, what you're personally more into. I generally can get really bored if there's Pokemon battling going on for a long time. I think more than Alex does. I, you know, maybe am more appreciative of a quote intellectual purpose, mocking myself because these Pokemon movies.
Sci-fi fan.
Yeah, like I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I love something that has like a, you know, intriguing, like, unique premise or something, even if the movie isn't like quite as gripping. Yeah.
And I like Shakespeare and the classics.
Yeah, like, so, you know, we're gonna have slightly different preferences and stuff. Not that I think Arceus is wildly better than Darkrai, or you think Arceus is a terrible movie or anything like that.
No.
It's just these kind of like nitpicky things. And I think this is also where it's more difficult for us to rank. You know, we both had movies. For me, it's this next movie. For Alex, it was this movie where we had to kind of like sit around and think for a bit and say, is it better than this other movie? What are we even doing? Why are we doing this? How different are these movies? Yeah. And I think it's also more difficult when you have movies that are different. I think up until Arceus, the plot of a lot of these movies kind of followed the same formula, right? Where you have like a setup of this is a legendary Pokemon. You have maybe people who want to catch the legendary Pokemon, or maybe some goal the legendary Pokemon has. Then there's a lot of battling. Then maybe the legendary Pokemon dies at the end, like, half the time. Like, they all kind of have the same setup, which I think makes them a little easier to compare. Yeah. And the Arceus movie, I think, is the first to have kind of a vastly different kind of...
yeah, it's very distinct.
It has different beats.
Yeah, very different rhythm.
It's a different type of movie. Yeah. So, which I think makes it more difficult to compare.
Yeah.
Because you're not comparing things kind of as directly as you could be.
Yeah, like all the legendaries like fight at the start of the movie, which is a change.
Yeah. There's not quite as much epic battling towards the end. That's not really the
they don't
the
like
point.
have like a scene where like the cute little mythical Pokemon eats all of their food like they
like most of the other movies so far.
Speaking of a cute little Pokemon that eats all of their food.
So let's move on to our last movie.
Second movie. We've been talking about the Arceus movie for a long time.
Oh, you're right. Oh, I don't know why I've gotten so confused this week. So this is the second movie.
Yeah, because we're talking about two-thirds of a trilogy this week, rather than having all three of the trilogy in one episode.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm getting confused, which maybe would have been better, but it didn't come out that way. That's fine. I think it's honestly amazing that these movies are so close in quality that we originally ranked them so close so that we could almost watch them in order. Yeah. That's pretty lucky. But this second movie that we watched is Pokemon Giratina and the Sky Warrior. So do you want to start us off with a plot summary?
Here's basically Giratina and the Sky Warrior is the second in the Diamond and Pearl trilogy. So basically follows immediately after the Rise of Darkrai. And so what happens in this movie? So at first you have this little backdrop where Dialga and is like kind of flying around, and then Giratina like explodes out of a lake and tries to attack him because apparently Giratina's upset. But we'll kind of find that out later. And in the middle of this fight in the forest, a little forest creature called Shaman gets caught up literally hanging onto Giratina's head and does a huge explosion because it's so scared of both of them fighting. And in doing so, knocks Giratina back into the lake, which apparently goes into the reverse world. And Giratina can't escape the reverse world anymore. And so that's the setup that starts the adventure. Mm-hmm. So what happens next? Ash and friends are hanging out in this town, which I'm not even going to bother figuring out what town that is. And then out of the bushes, a little mythical Pokemon comes and eats all of their food.
All their pancakes.
All of their pancakes. And who is it? It's Shaman. He's a little dirty. He's a little hedgehog. And everybody's like, oh, you're cute. And then Shaman starts talking to him. And Shaman's really sassy. Shaman's like, I don't think you seem really lame, Ash. I like you, Dawn. And so Shaman has all this dirt on it, and they kind of like wash all of the dirt off. But then the Pokedex also mentions like, hey, like when Shaman gets really dirty, it could explode. Just as a heads up to you guys. I think they learned that
from Nurse Joy.
Yeah, later. Actually,
because they take Shaman to a Pokemon Center since it's been kind of injured.
It's got a fever.
It's got a fever, right? For some reason. So they take it to a Pokemon Center. Nurse Joy is like, oh yeah, that's a Shaman. We all know about Shaman. And they're like, oh yeah, it can use this move called Seed Flare, where if it takes in toxins and then it explodes them out, basically as like a cleansing sort of thing.
So Shaman feels all better now and it's like, thanks, Dawn. No, thanks, Ash. And Ash is like, I took you to the Pokemon Center. But Shaman's really sassy.
Yeah.
And Shaman's basically like, okay, but you gotta help me get to the flower garden.
Basically demands them to take him to the flower garden.
He jumps on Ash's head and goes, let's go! And then they like just start walking in a direction that Shaman thinks is towards the flower garden, but is really not sure. And eventually goes through this kind of like park with a bunch of sculptures with a bunch of mirrored sculptures.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of next to a mirror, and then they sort of see something, and suddenly a hole opens in that mirror, and they all get sucked into this strange world where a bunch of buildings are upside down.
Except Brock.
Yeah, except for Brock. Brock is just out there confused. And all of them get sucked in. They're just like, what is going on? There's like flying platforms. There's houses upside down, and this is the reverse world. Yeah. And so at first, Shaman's freaking out because Shaman's like, I know it. It's here. It's going to eat me. And Shaman's talking about Giratina, who really is flying around and threatening them at every turn. And so they start running, and then eventually gets stopped by a guy who is in the reverse world and takes them somewhere safe. And this guy's name is Newton St. John, I think. Newton Graceland.
St. John?
I don't know.
Where'd you get that?
I don't know. It just seemed like...
I'm amazed that you remember his last name, though.
Newton Graceland. No, St. John is not his name.
No.
I was just thinking about some weird name because I was like, he's got a weird name.
Yeah.
Newton Graceland. So, Newton Graceland.
He says, "Hey, I'm a researcher in the reverse world. I don't know why you guys are here, but I can help you get out." Basically,
yeah, the foremost researcher of the reverse world.
Yeah.
And he does. He basically just walks them over to an exit and gets out with a few close calls with Giratina along the way.
Yeah.
But then all of them manage to get out, though Team Rocket, who was sucked in as well, is still stuck there.
Yes.
And so they escape. And Newton says, "Stay away from mirrors in the future."
Yeah. So they start on their way, and they're asking Shaman, "Okay, where do we go?" And Shaman's not really sure. And then all of a sudden, all these Magnemite come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And Magnezone and a Magneton, and they start attacking. Earlier in the movie, we saw another very common thing in a Pokemon movie: this dude in an airship, in a very spiky-looking airship, who has been tracking Giratina and is now tracking Shaman because it saw what Shaman did at the beginning of the movie, use Seed Flare and take away Giratina's power. And it sees that Giratina is chasing after Shaman, so he's trying to get Shaman too.
Yeah. So basically, he goes, "Ha ha ha ha, I will take Shaman." And Ash is like, "Why?" And he's like, "I'm not telling you." And then they fight, and then they manage to get away from him.
They get away, and they run onto a train.
Yeah, they get onto a train. And on the train, they meet a nice family who says, "Oh, Shaman, yeah, we know Shaman."
Yeah.
Shaman looks like these Gracidea flowers.
That they happen to have in a basket.
Yeah. And the Gracidea garden is the place where a lot of Shaman go sometimes, I think.
And also this train is like on its way there.
Yeah, conveniently. And so Shaman's like, there, the flower garden, I gotta go. And so they set a course for the flower garden, but not before the Gracidea flowers in this cool 3D close-up start giving off some pollen. And suddenly Shaman is flying. He's gone
transformed into sky form.
Yeah, he's gone from being a little cute hedgehog to a cool reindeer, a tiny reindeer.
Yeah.
So tiny reindeer Shaman's flying around the train going, "Yeah, look at me!" When suddenly a bunch of Magnemite show up.
and crash through the window. They start attacking everyone again.
And so there's a big fight. Pikachu's shooting things. Shaman's shooting them and going, "Shaman!" whenever he shoots balls at the Magnemite. And they successfully fight off all of these Magnemite and Magneton stuff.
And the one Magnezone. Also, whenever they go through a tunnel, there's like this hint that Giratina, because I guess when you go through a tunnel, a window becomes a mirror.
Yeah,
which
in
it
real
does.
life, yeah.
So there's like these hints that Giratina's going to come through during the tunnel.
Every time they're near a mirror, Giratina's still watching, waiting for an opportunity to snatch Shaman and presumably eat him.
Yeah.
So
in order to get to the Gracidea garden, they have to transfer from the train onto a boat.
Yeah.
So they transfer to the boat.
Yeah. And they start heading towards it, and they're going through this big valley, which is apparently a glacier valley at some point. Mm-hmm. And they start heading towards the glacier, which is close to where the flower garden is. So they're going up on a ferry. They're really having a good time. They're like flying around.
Piplup swimming.
Yeah.
Around.
Piplup swimming.
Pikachu's riding on Staravia.
Yeah, Shaman's enjoying being a sky form. When suddenly, I think at this point, the airship shows up, or yeah, we're gonna have to reference.
Okay, let's
a
check.
few things are kind of out of order here.
So they're flying around.
Oh
no! Out of the water, I think Giratina.
Yeah.
Giratina opens. Opens up. Yeah. And in the water, Giratina opens up another hole.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy in the airship has been tracking where Giratina is going to open up next. Yeah. So he sees that it's going to be over there.
And so basically, they all get sucked back in. This time with Brock, I don't really.
Yeah,
remember.
Brock is in there this time.
Yeah.
And they see Newton again, and he's like, "Hey, I don't know why you guys are back."
Yeah, but then they're trying their best to escape, and then Newton at this point says, "Hey, look at all this purple cloud that's in here." So these have been happening because of disruptions that Dialga and Palkia have been doing by fighting each other.
Yeah, and also just anything because the reverse world and the real world are kind of parallels of each other, right? So the idea is when negative things happen in the real world, then there's these, toxic clouds basically that get created in the reverse world. Yeah.
And so basically, I'm pretty sure, yeah, at this point, the Magnemite.
Yeah, so the guy in the airship shows up, and he's still trying to get Shaman, right? So the way that he does that is he traps Shaman with the Magnemite and everyone else too, so that they can't move.
Oh yeah, so he came along into the reverse world using this cool little floaty platform that he always flies around in.
And he forces a toxic cloud onto Shaman, and onto everyone else too, which they have said before, if you breathe it, you die.
Yeah.
So Shaman, wanting to save everyone, uses Seed Flare, sucks in all the toxic gas, uses Seed Flare, and creates another... a
hole, basically. And in doing so, basically, Giratina, everybody, all of the Magnemite, everybody gets sucked back out into the real world. And Zero goes, ha ha ha, this was my plan all along. And shows that he was following Shaman because Shaman has the power, and the reason that Giratina was following Shaman is because Shaman has the power to do Seed Flare again and release Giratina back into the real world. And so Giratina's happy because Giratina's back in the real world, and wants to go take revenge on Dialga. But Zero, who is the guy in the big airship, is happy because Giratina is in the real world. And he's like, haha, now Giratina, you are finally here. I'm going to capture you. And so he brings down his giant spiky airship and puts this giant claws around Giratina and traps him very effectively. And then in a very, very unnecessary moment, jumps back onto the airship from the ground and holds on to it.
Really intense.
As it flies back into the air.
So one important thing that has been revealed during this time is that Newton has, now that he met Zero, has said, oh man, that guy used to be my research assistant.
And
so basically in the past, Zero was Newton's research assistant, and Newton had been trying to create a machine that would take Giratina's energy so that he could create holes in the reverse world in order to continue doing research on it.
Yeah, to go back and forth at will.
But Newton realized at one point that using this machine would drain all of Giratina's energy and essentially kill it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he says, we have to cancel the project. I'm deleting all of this. And Zero's like, no, we have to do this for research. I can't believe that you're giving up on this. He deletes everything. But Zero takes what plans he has and creates his own version of that.
Yeah. And so the giant airship has been completed, and he's fulfilling his plan and is draining Giratina's energy. And the percentage is just going up and up and up, and presumably when it hits 100%, Giratina will die and Zero will have all of the power.
So Newton says, I'm going to go talk to him. Ash and friends, you guys need to you guys need to fend off these Magnemite and all of these Pokemon, basically, while I go talk to Zero.
Yeah, so they basically all fly up on the little airship thingy that Zero left behind. And Ash and friends and Newton all get onto the airship, fighting off all of the Magnemite along the way. Shaman's helping out too. And then Newton breaks into the airship and starts hacking. He starts hacking.
Because Zero won't listen to reason.
Yeah.
So
he starts hacking and trying to stop the Giratina absorption. And just as they're about to, the Giratina absorption is about to finish, it's at 99%. He finishes the hack and cancels it. And Giratina, just
kind of falls in a lump
out of the prison and into the ground. Also, as a side effect, he's like, oh yeah, because I did the hacking, this ship's going down.
Yeah.
And Ash and friends and Newton have to escape from the ship. And they all jump back down to the ground before with a very dying Giratina. And Ash goes to Giratina and goes Giratina is dying, we're too late. And then Shaman crawls on Giratina and goes, Shaman, and uses aromatherapy, which manages to help resuscitate Giratina. And everybody's happy. Giratina's okay. They manage to stop the big ship when suddenly a tinier, cooler, spiky ship shoots out of the Giratina capture ship, and it's got Zero in it. And he's like, ha ha ha, 99% is plenty for me to have the power of Giratina to go in and out of the reverse world. And now I'll do my plan of ruling from the reverse world as king, and I will also crush everybody in the real world who is destroying my beautiful reverse world.
So everyone goes back into the reverse world, basically.
Yeah, so he Zero like goes into the reverse world using his ship, which now has Giratina's energy, and starts shooting down pillars that are keeping the glacier in the real world stable. And so the glacier in the real world starts sliding down the valley, threatening to crush all of the forests
and all the towns.
All the towns. Very terrifying glacier coming down the river, and they're like, we got to stop Zero. And so I think Ash rides on Giratina at this point, and manages to go back into the reverse world.
Yeah,
but it's like a tough fight. Like Giratina and the ship are just like, head to head. Like, it's got Giratina's power. The Giratina's not finding an advantage here.
Yeah, and Shaman's there too.
Yeah, so the battle is going long, and while the battle is continuing, the glacier gets ever closer, and suddenly they're trying their best to slow the glacier, but it's destroying everything. Like all of the forest animals come out and try to use Ice Beam to stop the glacier, but it's not working. And then suddenly you see from up top a cliff and inside a cave, a Regigigas, who's been sleeping, goes like, and presumably decides that he needs to come out and protect everyone, and so sends himself and a herd of Mamoswine, a giant herd of Mamoswine, in at the glacier and tries to stop it, but they're still not able to push it.
Regigigas and Mamoswine are holding the glacier. Dawn and a bunch of Dawn's Pokemon and a bunch of other forest Pokemon are using ice attacks to freeze the lake to try to push the glacier back. So they're holding it pretty well, but it's still moving.
Yeah, but as even though they're fighting so hard, as long as Zero's in the reverse world wreaking havoc, there's no way that they're able to stop the glacier. And I forgot how they managed to beat him in the reverse world, but
so Shaman uses Seed Flare again, basically. Zero traps them with some more smoke, and Shaman uses oh god.
No, we're down here already. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Oh yes. So Zero's attacking Giratina with his ship. Shaman uses Seed Flare so that they reopen the portal.
Yeah.
And Zero tries to attack Shaman, but Giratina has been freed and it holds onto the ship. So that the portal's opening, the ship's trying to move out of the way, but they basically make it so that the ship shoots through the hole.
Yeah, so the ship shoots through the hole and crashes onto the ice.
Yeah.
And that's how the ship goes down, and it's like, systems failing.
And they freeze the ship in place.
Yeah,
with their
the forest
ice attacks.
Pokemon are just like, quick, before you can do anything, very aggressively freeze him into the glacier.
Yeah, so Team Rocket, Ash, and Giratina are still in the reverse world, but Giratina fixes the ice pillars.
Yeah, to restabilize the glacier.
And opens a portal to the real world. They come out. Team Rocket gets out too, somehow. And Shaman gets to return to the forest.
Yeah, so that's basically it. So
and Zero gets arrested.
Yeah. And so everybody's safe. Everything's happy. The glacier has been stopped. Zero's getting arrested, and then they have to have a tearful goodbye with Shaman at the flower garden, where he comes down and he's like, Ash, you're pretty cool too. Yeah. Like, I'll never forget you. And Ash is crying, bawling now. And then all of the other shaman arrive at the flower garden too. And it's like, oh, it's your friends. And then they all fly off into the distance together. And that's the end of the movie.
All right. So, our experience watching it the first time around.
I'd say that I was pretty annoyed at Shaman for most of the movie when I watched it.
Yeah, I think you more than me, but I also was.
Yeah, I didn't think that the sky form was really cute, and I thought that, it just wasn't, like, that impactful to me when I watched it the first time around. I think the only things I remembered were Mamoswine. I really liked Mamoswine, and I was like, oh, it's another big airship movie, and I was, like, pretty, like, not that excited about it. As for why it was ranked above the other ones, I think I just had an even lesser opinion of the Arceus movie and the Darkrai movie back at the time. And so I was just like, I guess the Shaman movie is better than them because it, has Mamoswine in it. I still remember making that argument based entirely on Mamoswine.
Yeah, and I remember also being kind of irritated at Shaman. I remember feeling like the only parts in the movie I really liked were Giratina being really cute and friendly at the end.
Yeah.
I thought the Regigigas and the Mamoswine were kind of fun. And I thought Shaman was kind of annoying and, like, not that interesting.
Yeah. I thought the movie went on very long too.
Yeah.
Like they felt like they were on the train forever, and then they were on the boat forever, and then.
And I had it ranked between the Darkrai and Arceus movie before, so I think those negatives must have been a lot stronger for me. What was your experience like watching the movie again?
So watching it again, I really don't know why I was so annoyed with Shaman. I actually think that Shaman is genuinely like funny, like sassy, charming, like, and the kind of like initial annoyance with Ash, and then Ash just bawling at the end. It's like hard not to get behind like this.
Yeah, I second all of that.
Yeah, this cute like friendship that's forming between Shaman. I think that the reverse world is cool. I think that the plot is really coherent. Like, frankly,
yeah. I know we kind of tripped up a little at the end, but that was more about the specifics.
Yeah. It makes total sense when you're watching it.
Yeah.
I think that everything just fits in really well, and it's a very satisfying adventure that you go along with. Sure, there's like specifics about like the reverse world, this and that, but like the core of it, which is Shaman. It's bond with Ash and like Newton's like trying to convince Zero and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It comes across. It's
compelling enough.
It's compelling. It's human. You understand it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great images and a lot of exciting moments throughout the entire thing.
I think another strength this movie has is that it doesn't try to introduce a whole slew of new characters that we're supposed to care about. It's really just Newton and Zero.
Yeah.
And they have a really interesting relationship.
Yeah.
Interesting motivations. I think the reverse world is really cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think in the game in Pokemon Platinum 2, it's really cool. That was the one thing I was really blown away by in that game. And I think the movie kind of brings it across really well. It's really interesting. I also think some movies, because this movie does the whole double climax thing where you've got the one climax where they're trying to stop him from draining Giratina's power.
Yeah.
And then you think the movie's over. But then no, actually he did succeed, and so they have the second climax. And sometimes, maybe the first time we watched it, maybe we felt like that made the movie too long.
Yeah.
Or that it dragged on. But this time I thought it was actually really effective. I liked it.
Yeah, I think that the glacier is like one of the most like kind of like daunting situations.
It's very visceral to like imagining a glacier slowly moving toward you with no way to stop it.
Yeah,
it's a very visceral fear. So
yeah, like being afraid of bears, like things that just like human instinct like make you
I was
terrified.
playing Breath of the Wild the other day and I encountered a bear and I was like, this is the most afraid I've been in this game, because like encountering a bear is a very visceral human fear in the way encountering like a bokoblin is not.
Yeah, like you've been like through like lava fields, you've been through like a million people shooting like exploding things at you, but like the moment you see a bear, you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah, your fight or flight kicks in a very real way.
And the same kind of felt with the glacier. I think it was very effective. Yeah. And like this is a thing that we can say about very few Pokemon movies. I think that Shaman's just really charming. Like, I think that
it's really cute.
It's really cute. He's charming. There's like some lines that like got a genuine laugh out of me. Like when he was riding on top of Ash, which is really cute too. He's just like sitting on Ash's head. And it's like, why are you always sitting on my head if you hate me? It's like, so that you'll get eaten first. I mean,
yeah, so that the Giratina will eat you too. Yeah, it's really cute.
Yeah, like some genuine, like, cute, charming moments.
The other thing that I think is present, I think we mentioned this for the Darkrai movie too. Not as present in the Arceus movie, but with these movies from the 4th gen, I've said this before, Dawn and Ash have a really strong friendship.
Yeah.
Piplup is adorable, and I think this movie is perhaps the strongest in terms of that coming across. The tag team battle at the beginning is really, really cute.
I think that was the other movie, wasn't it? The watermelon battle was in the Arceus.
Oh, movie. Yeah, you're right. Okay, well, that was really, really cute in the other movie. Just as a side note then.
I don't know what battle happens in this movie, but I'm sure it was great, because Piplup can never do wrong.
It was more kind of the antics in the beginning when they're all trying to eat.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a side note for the Arceus movie, I guess.
Yeah, Piplup's like all angry at Shaman, like literally like combative at Shaman at the start for eating his food and all that. I think Piplup really does make a lot of these movies really sing. So... re-ranking this movie, I easily thought it was the best movie we have watched so far. This is another really easy one for me. It's got a lot more attention than a lot of other movies, a lot more narrative tension. The characters are a lot more compelling. The movie we've watched so far that I think has the fewest weaknesses I can point to. It's really hard for me to like pinpoint things that really irritated me with this movie. So Yeah, I totally agree. It's just a strong movie throughout. The characters are charming. Like, Shaman's charming, Piplup's charming. Ash and Dawn are a great friendship. Like, the characters are compelling. Like, what else do you need? Like, the plot is interesting. The plot is not that predictable. It's like, fairly unpredictable, actually.
Yeah,
like,
I think at this point, the only real weaknesses that I can kind of point to, which are true for a lot of these movies, is Brock is just kind of there. And Team Rocket is just kind of there. Yeah. It is. I really think a Pokemon movie really, really sings when Team Rocket is somehow relevant to the plot, and so far that really hasn't been the case very much, and that's true of this movie too. But those are small things that I can overlook.
Yeah, and I think that as we continue to talk about movies, we should also point out though that even we're seeing very high praise for this movie, it's not like. It's still like largely forgettable in the way that a lot of these middle tier movies are.
Yeah,
like,
it's very much a middle tier movie.
We're not gonna like go to bed thinking about Shaman or something. So like even though we're saying very like high praise for it, like in the context of a lot of the movies.
I mean, to be fair, I feel like saying there's not really a specific thing I can point to that's bad about this movie. Isn't like the highest praise.
It's very like damning with faint praise kind of a situation.
Yeah. But yeah, it was for me. It's easily at the top of the list. Easily better than all the other movies we've watched.
Yeah, and I'll say that exactly the same for me. So far, all three of them sitting pretty in the
in that tier, enjoyable
in that
enough. It's a movie sort of tier.
Yeah, the higher tier, the Diamond and Pearl trilogy, all sitting pretty.
All right, so we'll move on to the last movie we watched this week. I think this is going to be kind of a long episode, but that's fine. Yeah. Pokemon the movie White, Victini and Zekrom. Or Pokemon the movie Black, Victini and Reshiram. A little explanation. These are the same movie, except with Victini and Reshiram. Zekrom and Reshiram swapped, essentially. And probably the lines about the truth and ideals swapped also, much like in the games. Yeah. The only one that was available, weirdly, was
Pokemon the movie White.
Yeah, Victini and Zekrom. That was the only one available to rent, so that's probably the one we watched before. I don't know why.
Yeah, it certainly is.
So let's get into a summary of this one. Maybe we can be a little bit faster, though it is difficult.
This is going to be a pretty simple one.
That's true.
So basically, Ash and friends, this is in the Black and White series. Ash, Iris, and Silent are walking through this town, and they see a Pokemon battle tournament going on. And so they get in this Pokemon battle tournament where the everybody who loses is eliminated and has to give up their little like necklace thing.
Well, no. First, they're walking through this town and they see some deerling who are trying to eat some berries and they almost fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Victini's there in the background. Victini is what scared them, but they don't see that. So Ash tries to go save the deerling. He almost falls off the cliff. Victini gives him some superpower to be able to leap really far across the cliff, which is really crazy, even for Ash, who can probably do that anyway. They end up crawling through these tunnels. Victini lets him have the sight of where to go, and he ends up escaping with Victini's help.
And they're like walking through this castle trying to escape, and they meet this guy whose name is
Damon. Yeah.
This guy's name is Damon, who has really like weird half white and half black hair.
Also, before that, very important to note, Silent has made macarons, and Victini keeps eating the macarons. They have not seen Victini yet, but Victini has interacted with them a lot already.
So basically, they've been trying to escape from this situation, getting out of the castle, finding their way out, and they're just like, oh, this weird stuff keeps happening. I'm super strong. Our macarons keep disappearing. What's going on? And then they meet this guy named Damon, who has this very distinct white-black hair. And is like, hey, I'm taking care of this castle. Let me help you out of here. And so he helps them get out of the castle. And so they go to the town in which this big Pokemon competition battle is happening. And everybody's competing. Silent, Iris, and Ash. And so there's this whole montage. They're all battling. Silent gets eliminated. Iris gets eliminated. And at the last few battles, Ash is like, okay, I gotta fight this, really tough Pokemon. I'm going to use Tepig.
Yeah.
Like this Samurott, I'm going to use Tepig. And they're like, I don't think this is going to go very well for Ash. And then Victini shows up, magically gives Tepig some extra powers after Tepig takes a brutal hit from Samurott.
And Tepig one-shots the Samurott.
Yeah, and Tepig one-shots the Samurott with Ember. And everybody's like, whoa, and Ash is just like, cool, I knew you could do it, Tepig.
Yeah.
And then they get to the grand final where they're fighting this other character who seems very significant based on the way she's drawn, named... It's Juanita's daughter, whose name is... And Juanita is this person at the shop who tells them the legend of Victini.
Carlita.
Yeah, okay. So somewhere along this tournament, she's telling them the legend of Victini, who is a Pokemon that'll assure you victory and give you strength. And so everybody in this town prays to Victini. Anyway, so the last battle is between that woman's daughter, Carlita, and Ash. Carlita has this shiny Hydreigon. Is that how you call it?
Hydreigon.
Hydreigon.
Eins, zwei, drei.
Hydreigon.
Yeah.
Hydreigon. And Ash is using Scraffy or whatever his name is. I'm not very good with this gen. Scrafty?
Yes. I think so.
Scrafty.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to hide that I also care.
Yeah. And Ash is just like, I know you can do it, and everybody's just like, I don't think he's got this.
Yeah.
And then suddenly Scrafty is knocked into a tree, and then Victini shows up, and Carlita's like,
Scraggy. Scrafty is the evolved form.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Scraggy gets knocked into a tree. Victini shows up and powers up Scraggy. And then Carlita's just looking from the corner of her eyes. She's like, I see what's going on here. And then Scraggy, of course, comes back and whoops Hydreigon onto the top of a bunch of stairs and is immediately fainted. And it's like, Scraggy, I knew you could do it. And then Carlita's like, great job. Congratulations, Ash. You're the champion of this battle. You totally used Victini's help. Let me show you.
And they're like, what? We didn't do anything. Because they don't have no idea.
Yeah.
So Victini ends up luring it out of the bushes with a Macaron because they end up figuring out, that must have been what was eating our Macarons.
And helping us, jump across cliffs and do all this magical stuff.
So they play with Victini for a while, and they end up deciding to go and run out of the city.
Yeah, they kind of run along having fun, and then Victini smacks into a wall as they're trying to leave the city. An invisible wall that's this big purple wall, and they're not really sure why Victini can't cross. And so they meet up with the rest of Carlita's family, Juanita and the mayor, who is not part of their family.
Yeah.
The mayor's just there. And then I think Juanita is like, let me tell you the story of Victini.
And Damon. They meet up with Damon,
Yeah, they meet up with Damon.
Who is Juanita's son also.
Yeah, so they reveal that this guy with the weird haircut, the black-white haircut who takes care of the castle, is also Juanita's son. So the family is Juanita with their kid, Damon, and Carlita. And so Juanita's like, Ash, let me clue you in on what's going on here. So a long time ago, there was a very nice king, and who had a little Victini. And he had 2 sons or something.
Yeah, so he has... This part's in the game, so I can probably say this part a little easier. He has 2 sons, the hero of truth and the hero of ideals.
Yeah.
The hero of truth has the Pokemon Zekrom, and the hero of... No. The
Other way around.
God damn it. The hero of truth has the Pokemon Reshiram.
Who's white.
And the hero of ideals has the Pokemon Zekrom. They get along. Eventually, they end up fighting over which is more important, which is better, truth or ideals. And there's a big battle that kind of goes on for a long time and destroys a lot of people, a lot of cities. They end up feeling bad, so they put Victini and Zekrom into these balls.
No, Reshiram and Zekrom.
This movie title is tripping me up. Reshiram and Zekrom into these balls, and they put them way down under the castle.
And for some reason,
they have to be reawakened by someone who is chosen by the Pokemon to have the real truth or real ideals.
And for some reason, during this huge war, in order to save everybody, they need to lift the big castle up.
So
and put it somewhere else.
The people of the Vale, that's what all of these people in the town belong to. It's this. Yeah, so the people of the Vale or whatever, they're connected to the dragon force that flows throughout the world, flows throughout the valley. And during this time, since they're dragon Pokemon, the dragon force gets disturbed, which means that they have to move this castle. So the guy who lives in the castle, he's like a king or something, is friends with Victini. He says, Victini, lend me your power. Victini helps him lift up the castle out of the ground and insert it in this other place far away that kind of seals and balances the dragon power. And that's where the town that they are now is. Yeah. But the king kind of loses his strength along the way, and all of these pillars around the town that had been helping Victini fly the thing, kind of trap Victini in this sphere. So Victini cannot leave this place. And this was 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, so Victini's been in this place for 1,000 years. But, the castle is secure and all of that stuff. So that's basically the end of the story. And then Damon says, hey, let me tell you about what I've been doing for the, past little while. I've actually been going around everywhere, and I actually even met Reshiram, who's now my friend, but, he kind of, keeps that a little hush-hush, but we see that at the start of the movie. He's like, I've actually been going around and trying to collect the people of the Vale and trying to, restore our ancestral home. And so he wants to get everybody back to the original position of where the castle was, and also have the community reunite there. So this kind of diaspora of the people of the Vale. He's found all of them. They all march into the room coincidentally right at the right moment when they're done telling the story, and all the people of the Vale are we're so ready to restore our ancestral home.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ash and friends and Victini kind of wander off. I think
they're not here for a lot of this because this is kind of a people of the Vale sort of thing.
Yeah, so they wander off a little bit, and Victini says, "I want to go to the ocean," using hand gestures,
mm-hmm.
and Ash is like, "I'll get you to the ocean no matter what."
Yeah, making promises.
Yeah.
And
then while they're away, Damon's like, "Okay, it's time," and he goes up to the top of the place, and starts getting his sigilif to start doing stuff, and then they kind of lure Victini in towards the castle, and so Victini is now separated from Ash and friends, I think.
Yeah.
And now Victini is like, "Hey, Damon, what's up?" And Damon's like, "This is what's up," and he imprisons Victini in the Pillars of Protection, which are now forming this little cage, and he's stuck.
He starts taking Victini's power in order to raise up the castle.
Yeah, so he's using Victini's power to power up a bajillion Solosis that are sitting inside the castle.
And Victini is clearly not having a good time. Victini did not agree to this.
Draining Victini to get this done, and all the Solosis start using psychic on the castle, and it starts going up into the air, and he's like, "The legend was real, the prophecy is real, this castle was once in another place, and I will bring it back." And so he starts flying the castle over towards its original position. Ash and friends
show up because they're like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
So they make it onto the castle before it escapes.
Yeah.
And they come in and they're like, "What's going on?" And they the first thing they see is that Victini is clearly not having a good time.
Yeah, is in pain.
So
trapped.
They say, "You have to release Victini."
Yeah.
And he says, "No, I need to restore the people of the Vale."
And so Damon summons Reuniqueless. Yu-Gi-Oh terminology. He chooses Reuniqueless. He chooses Reuniqueless. He has Reuniqueless come out of his Pokeball, and they start fighting. And Reuniqueless fights them a little bit, but then Pikachu wins, and they talk a little bit more, and basically Reuniqueless knocks them out. And then they're all put into this little storeroom area where they're being imprisoned while Damon continues to do his work.
Mm-hmm.
And in the storeroom, I think before Ash wakes up or something, he has this vision where Victini is trying to communicate to him.
So Victini shows Ash a conversation that he had with the king before the king passed
1,000 years ago,
where the king said, "Hey, by the way, don't move the castle or else the dragon forest will become unstable again
and destroy the world."
Yeah.
Never move the castle.
So Ash wakes up. He now has this information. They say, "We need to find a way to stop Damon because we don't want the world to be destroyed." They figure, if Reshiram is here, because I think actually Damon had summoned Reshiram at this point.
Oh yeah.
Then they summoned.
Yeah.
Basically summoned.
Yeah.
So they conveniently are in the room that leads down below the belly of the castle, where they assume Zekrom is, which it is. Ash ends up approaching Zekrom, and Zekrom says, "What is your ideals that you must come and face me for?" And Ash says, "I want to bring Victini to the ocean." And Zekrom's like, "Good enough for me."
Yeah, and they literally pop out of the side of the side of the castle basement.
Yeah,
and they fly up to the top where Damon still is with Reshiram, and Ash is now with Zekrom and going "We're gonna take you down." And so Ash fights Damon. who has got a Reshiram, and Ash has got Zekrom, and they're all like very like like evenly matched. And then somehow, some way, like somebody notices. I think the mayor flies down and notices that like everything's being destroyed because of the,
So what happens is that Reshiram says, "Hey, Damon, something bad is happening," and they blow away the clouds, and Damon can see by a very convenient green good, purple bad kind of dichotomy that actually bad things are happening down at the bottom. Which he didn't anticipate.
Yeah. So even though like at first like Reshiram was on Damon's side and they were fighting.
Once they find out about all of this don't move the castle stuff.
I think like the mayor like goes down or comes up or something and then like just updates Reshiram and it's like, "Hey, Reshiram," and then Reshiram's like, "Oh," and then goes over to Damon and goes like, "Yo, you got to see this," and then they like.
So Damon says we have to all evacuate. Because that's the most important thing. But Ash is there with Victini, and remember Victini can't go beyond these pillars. Yeah. So Victini, so he's like, "I'm not going to leave Victini here," and everyone ends up, due to some things, everyone ends up evacuating except for Ash. So now it's just Ash and Victini on the castle.
Yeah.
So the Dragon Force, the purple Dragon Force, which is the bad Dragon Force, ends up winding up the castle because it was reversed or something, and pushes the castle way up into space. So now Ash is in space and cannot breathe.
Yeah. And freezing.
Victini
is also in space with him in this like progressively tightening prison of pillars.
Yeah.
It's now about like a foot wide each way and slowly crushing, like getting smaller and smaller. While
and like... Ash is like slowly dying. Pikachu seems to be not doing great either.
Yeah.
And Damon is up there with Reshiram trying to pry open the pillars to save them.
Is he? I thought that he fell off the thing and then Reshiram's doing this on his own.
No, he's there with Reshiram.
Okay.
He's like he keeps saying, "Ash, we're gonna save you."
Yeah, that's right.
So Victini ends up getting really inspired as Ash falls unconscious and is going to die, and ends up just forcing the stuff open with raw power.
And his signature move in the games, which is like V flare or something, but like we don't know that in the
searing shot.
Like he like lights up.
V-create.
V-create. Yeah, that's right. I knew it was a V thing.
Yeah, okay.
So he uses V-create and like, like flares up and then suddenly like, pries open the pillar and Victini seemingly like shoots into space, kind of like this flare.
So now we cut to the pillar, the castle is floating down.
Yeah.
Victini and Reshiram and Zekrom and a very helpful Golurk are using their power to push the castle forward because now it's not being powered by anything. And they need to slot it in back where it originally was.
Next to the town.
No. Into the they don't go back to the town.
I thought it's going back to the town because.
No, I'm pretty sure they go to the.
The new place is bad because like they need to seal off the Dragon Force.
No, because remember they're by the ocean at the end.
Okay.
They do end up bringing it back to the people of the Vale's original place. I'm pretty sure.
The funny thing is I know that we had this debate the first time that we watched this movie too. Because the original place is on a cliff near the ocean too. So my understanding was that he's like, you can't move the castle, you have to leave it here. And so they bring it back to there rather than moving it to the original people at the Vale place.
Okay, well Bubblepedia is not really telling us. So either way, they slot it back into somewhere.
The place that it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And they end up. I'm pretty sure it's the. Okay, whatever.
We've had this conversation last time too.
So it's unclear. They slot it into somewhere. Victini and Ash and friends are all at the ocean. No, because they think Victini is dead. Sorry, spoilers.
Yeah.
After Victini like pushes the pillars or whatever.
Or no, Zekrom and Reshiram push the pillar.
No, after Victini escapes the pillars or whatever. And Ash says, "I was going to bring you to the ocean." And then he throws a macaron at the ocean, and then it stops in midair. And oh my gosh, Victini's eating the macaron, and Victini was actually fine and was having fun flying around and talking to all the Pokemon because it's finally free from its prison.
And all of the forests are healing after the dragon force has been restored.
Yeah, and also it seems like the kingdom of the Vale, which was the place of the people of the Vale, can probably be fine.
Yeah, like they're reviving the land,
yeah.
even though that, it looked like the land wouldn't be revived.
Yeah.
Damon and all of the people of the Vale have been reunited, and they're going to make a new...
Yeah. And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, watching it the first time around, where was this one ranked? So this one was originally for both of us actually ranked above all of these other movies that we've watched so far, which I guess is why we watched it in this order. And I remember watching it before. I remember mostly being a little bit bored and a little bit confused. And that's mostly what I remember about watching it the first time, actually. I remember the macarons.
Yeah.
I can't remember why we ranked it so high, quite frankly.
The reason was we were both like, oh my god, when he was in space and like Victini was like, I'm going to...
Okay.
Yeah, like I feel like that kind of like woke us all up. Like woke us both up in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. It's very visceral.
He's in space. Ash Ketchum is in space.
Yeah, and dying from lack of air.
From lack of air and freezing. And we were like, reasonably moved, I think. And I think we at the time thought that Shaman was annoying, which from the other movie, Shaman was annoying. And Victini wasn't because he was more generic and floating around and cute. So we're like, it's like a better Shaman movie. So we put it kind of up. And also it has like, a story about like the diaspora and all that stuff. It's a reason it makes sense. And we also were approved of the fact that the main villain Damon like is barely a villain at all.
Yeah.
And like
it's more of an issue of not having all the information.
Yeah, it's all about truth and ideals. No, it's not.
Oh my God.
But like that they have like a reasonable dispute that causes the conflict of the film was an interesting choice, is how we felt. So
rewatching it, I think this is obvious. Cannot remember why we ranked it so high. There aren't really like plot holes, but like it is a little bit boring at times. It's not like the most compelling. I do think that the premise is very compelling. The whole like diaspora, trying to bring the diaspora back together, is really interesting. The one kind of sticking point that I have with it is Damon had no idea that this was going to happen if he brought the thing back together. But he did also, like, kind of force Victini into being used.
And he never really regrets that.
Yeah, like, no one ever kind of, like, points that out and says, hey, but you, like, also did not ask for consent from this Victini.
Torturing this small creature that has been the guardian of your city for 1,000 years.
Which, no one really addresses that. And apparently that's not his major sin.
No, his major sin is not knowing something.
Yeah, which I can agree is not really a sin, but that's kind of the main issue that I have.
Yeah, like I think that it sets up a premise and it doesn't really deliver. Like it sets up a situation where it's like, I want to use this power to like restore things and it will require sacrifice and it's like brutal, but it's the truth. It's what we deserve or something.
Yeah.
But it's kind of undercut by the fact that he's just like, oh, but then if the world's going to get destroyed anyway, then,
This movie also falls into the Gen 5 issue of, I think the Gen 5 games are really interesting, but they do have this issue where since they have these kind of counterpart truth and ideals things, they end up making them very interchangeable and not really meaning anything anymore. And this happens in the movie too. During this movie, they keep saying, but something, the truth. Yeah. You have to know the truth about the people of the Vale. Something, the truth about the people of the Vale, which I assume is just the ideals of the people of the Vale in the other movie. So it's kind of like, I'm not really sure what this is supposed to mean. I assume that's also true when Ash wakes up Zekrom, rather than being like, what's your ideals? What is your truth? And he's like, my truth is to bring Victini to the ocean. Yeah. Probably.
Whatever. I don't know. Something like that.
Also, I don't know why Ash's answer to Zekrom is not, I want to save the world that's about to be destroyed. It's, I want to bring Victini to the ocean.
In a sense, that's like the more righteous answer, like where he's supposed to be like, I think that the means that he is using to, do this thing is unacceptable. Maybe that would have been a more interesting movie. But then they have this whole, like, the world is going to get destroyed because this is a bad idea for, like, ecological reasons.
Yeah.
And, like, it kind of undercuts the whole, like, brutal person who is trying to restore, he's harming Victini to make up for a age-old insult to his people, which I think is like compelling. And Ash is kind of saying like, I understand that like things are bad, but like you can't do this by, hurting Victini. And that's like a compelling conflict, but they kind of undercut that by just having the world get destroyed by the Dragon Force. And so like, they never, basically he never answers for his decision to torture Victini, basically. And he goes through the entire movie while never having that addressed again. Yeah. Like you said, Gigi, like it's never really brought up.
Yeah. And I think the other thing with this movie that I'd forgotten about is that the people of the Vale are very clearly like Native American kind of like archetypes.
Yeah.
Which I don't know exactly how to feel about.
Yeah, like kind of like Central and South American with like Juanita and Carlita and like all that stuff.
Yeah, which I don't really have anything specific that I think was like a big issue that came up, but I also know that I'm not the person to say whether like this is a good representation of,
I'm sure
of
it's
these
not.
people or not, and I feel like it probably isn't. There's a lot of kind of stereotypical
it's kind of accessing.
We are people who are connected to the land sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like accessing that for aesthetic reasons.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So, and also it's just kind of boring. Like, I also want to say, like, besides, like, the thematic, like, issues with the movie, it's kind of boring. There's not much Pokemon battling.
And that was mostly what I remembered, and that stayed the same.
Most of the movie is just, like, random flashbacks. Most of it is telling, not showing.
Yeah.
Like, Zekrom and Reshiram are great at telling you about ideals, and, like, not really great at illustrating what's actually going on. Victini's not that charming. He's kind of I'm not going to say he's kind of annoying, like... He's cute enough, but like very insubstantial is kind of like the most like, fair argument I can say. Maybe I can like unfairly say that he's kind of just like whatever, but like all he does is go around throwing up the peace sign and trying to be cute.
And eating macarons.
Which is not really strong character building, honestly.
So, re-ranking, where did you re-rank this movie?
So, I used the method of what movie is closest to this movie in terms of my enjoyment of it. And I was just like, I easily enjoyed all the Diamond and Pearl movies more than these. Like, and, Diamond and Pearl movies get, like, a Dawn and Piplup bonus for the fact that, like, Iris and Silent, who are very insubstantial in this entire movie, too, by the way, like, are not very compelling supporting cast. And I dropped it below all three of those. And so far down, it actually landed in a tier lower because I was like, what movie is most similar to this in terms of my visceral enjoyment of this movie? It's the Hoopa movie. And this is better than the Hoopa movie because the Hoopa movie is real bad in a way that I love. But it's not worse than the Hoopa movie. It has a lot of compelling features. It follows as a movie. It's fine. It doesn't commit like grave movie sins like Hoopa does on a regular joyful basis where it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't care. It's, just... like really is like I don't really know what's going on with the Hoopa movie or who decided, but it doesn't commit like any major crimes, and so it it can't be worse than it. But I can't put it in the tier of the Diamond and Pearl movies because it can't just skate by on being like good enough to be, because like I genuinely enjoyed the Darkrai movie, I genuinely enjoyed the Arceus movie, like, and the feeling of like what all of those movies felt like as a complete package more than the sum of its parts. Like you can't get there just by what this movie has, which is all of the parts while being altogether less than the sum of its parts. So that's why I said that it can't be in the same tier as the Diamond and Pearl movies. So I'm going to drop it down with Hoopa Ring.
So I struggled a lot with this one. This is the one that for me, I ended up having to think a lot about for a long time. What it was for me was, is this better or worse than the Darkrai movie? I know that was an easy answer for you, Alex, but it was much more difficult for me because I don't think I enjoyed the Darkrai movie quite as much as you did. Again, for me, I always come back to, but it's a really interesting premise. But Alex makes the really good point that, an interesting premise does not mean an interesting delivery, does not mean an interesting movie, does not mean quality entertainment.
No.
Does not mean like a good kind of like message or things to think about at the end. It's just a premise. And so I ended up agreeing with Alex, and I put it exactly where Alex did, right above the Hoopa Ring movie in that tier. But I don't feel quite as strongly about it as Alex does. And there's still parts of me that really kind of struggle with where it places alongside the Darkrai movie. Although I do feel pretty confident in this assessment. But this was my most difficult one so far to kind of place, which again really speaks to how in a lot of this kind of lower middle area, it can be very, very subjective.
Yeah. So this is the most dramatic drop for both of us, actually, because this movie was like
it dropped 3 places and a tier.
3 places and a tier, yeah. Which I think for me speaks more to how the Diamond and Pearl movies were better than I remembered.
Yes, for sure, all of them.
It speaks to this movie because this movie is about as boring as I remembered it. It's pretty boring.
Yeah. I still struggle with the Darkrai movie. I don't know. I really didn't enjoy it as much as you did, but I can concede. I think that it is more enjoyable than
just like
at least more entertaining than this one.
Go back, listen to last week.
Yeah.
Like when you were fresh off the Darkrai movie, you talked about the narrative tension and the momentum and stuff. This has no momentum. It's incredibly plotting.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I remember being bored the first time and I was bored again the second time.
Yeah, and like the moment that he says that we're going to go down and get Zekrom or whatever, like it's just a predictable ride all the way down to Zekrom.
Yeah.
It comes out and it's a predictable ride to the finish, except for when they go to space, which I think we got like way too excited about the first time around.
I think so too. I didn't remember that was why it was so high. I couldn't really remember.
All I remembered about this movie was that he went to space. I didn't even remember why we called it Macaron.
I didn't remember anything about this. I just remembered the macarons. Pretty much. Only because we named it that. Okay, so
that's pretty much it for
that's pretty much it for this week.
Let's talk about the movies.
I keep saying this week as if this is a weekly thing. What day is it? We don't know what time it is. Like, what is this? What is life right now?
Saturday, Friday? I don't know.
I think it's Friday. It's Friday.
Shoot, yes. But the turnips are 2 days from now.
Yeah,
I thought it was
turnips
tomorrow.
are 2 days from now. That's some Animal Crossing stuff. So the next movies that we're watching, again, this is kind of more difficult to evaluate because a lot of these middle ones in the old list and probably in this new list will also be a little more shuffled around. But the next movie I believe we're watching is...
Yeah. So I know the 3 movies...
No. This is the next movie we're watching.
No, that's in the next set. I know one of the 3 movies that we're watching next is Mewtwo 3D.
Okay. So the next movie we're watching is Volcanion...
Mewtwo and Diancie. I don't remember what order it is, but
it's definitely Volcanion first. What's that movie called?
Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel.
How do you remember these? Yeah, Pokemon the movie, Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel. Excellent job. So that's the next movie we're watching.
So I liked that more than Gigi, but we're averaging out to, watch that one next.
Yeah. After that, we are watching... Oh, no, maybe we're watching... No. We're watching... Oh, Jesus. I think we're actually watching... Okay, I don't know what order, but we're watching...
I think we're actually watching
Volcanion
Diancie
movie. I think we are watching, actually, Diancie movie first.
Yeah, that's what we decided on, that we're going to watch Diancie next. I remember.
So first we're watching Diancie and the Cocoon of Destruction, and then we're watching Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel. And after that...
We're going to watch the new remake of the Mewtwo Strikes Back movie, which I think is called Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution or something.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Which we watched pretty recently. I don't think either of us are looking extremely forward to watching it again so soon, but,
Yeah, but I mean,
it's breaks.
It's good just because that movie is good. But
yeah,
we'll
the first
see.
movie's good, but we'll see.
I'm excited, though, to watch Uncle Volcanion, which is not what the movie's called, Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel again.
He just seems like an uncle in that movie.
Yeah, because that one was watched very different. It was watched after the original marathon, so we were kind of like placing that. Actually, the Volcanion movie, the Diancie movie, and the Mewtwo movie, all 3 of them were watched relatively far apart from the rest of the movies. Diancie we actually watched before our original marathon.
Yeah, it's kind of what made us decide to, I think,
to rank all the Pokemon movies. And then Volcanion we watched after it.
Because that was the first movie that came out after we finished.
Yeah. And then the Mewtwo just came out, so we just watched that.
Yeah, like a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So, what is time?
I know.
Weeks?
Yeah, it was only a few weeks ago, but it feels like forever ago.
Yeah. So
I'm excited to watch the Diancie movie because I had it ranked way higher than you, and
I think it's a bad
and I
movie.
really enjoyed it at the time. But I will concede that it's probably not as good as I remember.
I'm gonna call. I'm gonna pull the. I bet Gigi doesn't remember that movie very well thing because like we didn't even plan.
I think I remember it better than some of these other movies we just watched, though.
Maybe.
So this might be the first movie where I don't come back and say, actually, it was a lot better than I remembered.
We'll see.
Because maybe I think my expectations
I also
are
think
too
we might
high.
have watched it a second time during the marathon too.
We might have, yeah.
So I think we might have done that.
I have a bit better memory of it. Uncle Volcanion have very little memory of.
I remember very little about that movie too, to be honest. So
all right.
It'll be interesting.
So if anyone wants to watch along, those are the next 3 movies on the docket.
So in order,
we were mostly renting these on YouTube. Whatever's not available on Hulu or Netflix or anything, we're renting on YouTube.
Yeah. So follow along, if you will.
Yeah. And do you have any last thoughts before we close out?
Sorry, Pikachu. Piplup is really cute. I feel bad as a true Pikachu fan for being such a fan of Piplup. But
Piplup is really cute in the anime and in the movies. I really want to give kudos to whatever voice actress does Piplup's voice in the English dub of the anime because they do a really good job.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to never having to, like, now that we've moved past these Diamond and Pearl movies, never having to feel like I'm cheating on my boy Pikachu again.
Yeah. I highly recommend looking up the Piplup and Pikachu Sing a Song YouTube video from one of the Diamond and Pearl intros to one of the episodes. It's really cute. But yeah.
All right.
I think that's it.
Thank you for listening
to the Pikachu Project. I've been Gigi.
And I'm Walex.
And we will talk to you again soon, within a few days, I guess. Wash your hands, stay safe, stay inside. California's doing a great job, it seems, at least. I don't know about other states, but we'll see how this all goes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.